Hello, my name is Sheila, and I would like to welcome you to my podcast, All About You. I love to listen to podcasts and especially conversations with famous people. However, I think everyone has a story to tell. Maybe a place you have visited, a hobby you enjoy, or anything that you feel would be of interest. I want to have conversations with lots of different people and hear their stories. So if you have a story to tell, please contact me on my email, allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com. Welcome to another conversation on the All About You podcast. Do you love opera? If so, you are in for a treat, as my guest today is Paula Murrihy, who is from Ireland and is a mezzo soprano. Paula has had an international career being a member of the Frankfurt Opera, Metropolitan Opera and the Santa Fe Opera. Paula has an impressive list of roles which she has undertaken, which we will hear about. I met Paula when she played Dorabella in the opera Così fan tutte. Now, I adore the opera, the music, the singing, the costumes. I love the romance, the intrigue, and the passion of the opera that envelopes you and takes you to a different world. So I'm really excited to hear Paula's story. So Paula, welcome to the All About You podcast.
Thanks so much, Sheila. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to you. I have to say, this is going to be quite indulgent for me. I love the opera. And to have you answering the questions is just going to be an absolute dream. So thank you.
You're
So,
welcome.
Paula, my first question is, where did your love of singing begin?
Well, I think it began at quite an early age. The opera, the classical side of things would have come a little bit later. But when I started to sing, it was through the medium, I suppose, of Irish folk music, Irish trad music. My parents loved music, but again, it would have been kind of the Irish style of music in the house playing. And when I was 6, I actually went and I auditioned for the National Folk Theatre of Ireland, which is based in my hometown of Tralee, and it's called Sin Satira. At the age of 6, I had to do this audition. I remember very, very vividly, I prepared a song. I prepared a little dance because I had been taking Irish dancing lessons probably already about a year and a half. And then I remember there was a little bit, you had to sing back notes from a piano, do a little kind of ear training. I went and I did this audition and I got accepted. And it was from there, I suppose it was singing and theatre and performing began all together at that point. So really from the age then 7 to 10, from the age of 7 to 10, I would go once a week to this training center and we would spend 2 hours on a Thursday, a half an hour of music, a half an hour of singing, a half an hour of mime, and a half an hour of dancing. So it was a really fantastic training even at that age. And that's where my love of singing began. Then, just to kind of segue into the classical side of things, I would say I was about 12, 13, when I think it was my mom just said, do you want to take more serious, individual singing lessons? And I thought, yeah, why not? I'll go for it. So I took lessons at the Kerry School of Music and then began to really take it seriously, probably from the age of 14, 15. And at that point, I really thought things are getting serious in my love of singing. And that's when I thought it would be something that I could imagine pursuing after school.
Wow, that's an amazing story, because that was a very big commitment from the age of 6.
Yes.
You wanted to go and have lessons. It was a regular commitment. I mean, that is amazing.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, we were just fortunate as well to have such a great grounding in the whole world of theatre, really. It wasn't even just singing. I still look back on that time because from 7 to 10, we from the age of 7 to 10, I did these weekly classes. But then after that, we qualified for an audition to get into the main company, and the main company then was in the town of Tralee, and that was a series of classes that enabled us then to perform on the main stage in Tralee during the summer season, and that was absolute, professional, as professional as it can get with I was still a student, but we were performing for packed houses in Shin Satira Theatre all through the summer, busloads of tourists coming in and doing shows that depicted Irish life many, many years ago, when life was kind of centred mostly on the farm. So the rural life of Ireland, the origin of a particular style of dance that was from North Kerry. We would do this theatre through the medium of song, dance. There wasn't a lot of, there was no text. So we just depicted it all through music and dance. So it was a great beginning. And I didn't consider it, to be honest, quite a commitment. I just thought, God, I love this, So I knew from a young age it was where I was happy.
I mean, I think that's very interesting, because I think a lot of children will do dance classes or music classes. I think it's a great activity for children, meeting other children. It's having a goal. You work as a group, you work on your own. It's a commitment. It's good training and great fun. I mean, as a kid, I did ballet classes, absolutely love them. So yeah. A good childhood you had. You were being creative, something you enjoyed.
Yeah, I really did have a great childhood, and also it actually afforded me the first opportunity to travel. Traveling has now since become such a huge part of my life. And when I think about it, I got my first passport when I was 8, 9, I think. And I went off to Belgium with this company, and we did a tour of Belgium. And, my parents didn't come. They really entrusted me to this group, and I was very well looked after. Yeah, it really started a wonderful life in the theatre. And again, this kind of love of travel, I think, even started with this company.
My God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Old, leaving the family home, have passport, will travel, and you had a brilliant time.
I had a great time. I even kept a little diary, and I found it there a while ago, and it was really funny. I remember it just like, a 2-line entry on a day, but it would be, the chocolate here is amazing, Belgian chocolates, or all the important things, and food, and so it was great, really, really great.
So how did you then transition to opera?
Yeah, I think that was a little bit, like I said, maybe from the age of 15, 16, I really felt like I wanted to go more towards the classical side. And I was studying with a wonderful teacher in my hometown here in Tralee. Her name is Sharon Reedy, and Sharon was so wonderful. She gave me so much time and prepared me for lots of singing exams and competitions. And so I could kind of sense that I was decent at what I did. I was good and I enjoyed it. And then the idea to do it after school was not such a foreign thought, in the sense that I was so involved in music in my hometown. Not only was I involved, let's say, in Shin Satira, but then I joined the Tralee Musical Society. So I did musical theatre, and then I was with the Kerry School of Music, and I did things like the Mikado, the King and I, Guys and Dolls. So it was it's not that suddenly I thought, oh, I'm going to become a singer. I really was singing the whole way up. Now, in terms of opera, that would have come a little bit later, but I decided at the end of my secondary school that I would apply for a music degree performance in Dublin. And that was a big step. I will say that was a big decision, because I have thought for a long time that I would like to do primary school teaching and that I would keep music on the side. But honestly, when it came down to the absolute crux, when I had to kind of write on the dotted line and sign and say what was my first choice, it became very clear that I wanted to give music a go. So that was a moment, I think, making that decision, because the way that the exams are done here in Ireland, you do have this moment where you have to commit to saying what your first preference is. And if you get the points, that's it, that's what you're doing. So I think filling that line in on the form was a big moment. And I did the audition, and when I got into college, in Dublin, I studied at the Conservatory of Music, the DIT Conservatory of Music. It's now a different title, but I really committed to 4 years of a performance degree. And it really was a whole other world. I mean, it opened up a whole world of repertoire and a type of discipline. And the singing that I was doing, of course, as a student and here in Tralee, nothing really could have prepared me for the intensity of doing it at a college level. So then when I came to opera, I remember the very first opera that I saw was La Bohème, and it was with Opera Ireland, as it was known back then. And my repetiteur, the lady who was coaching me, Mairead Hurley, a wonderful mentor of mine, she got me a ticket. And I just adored it. I really, really loved it. And throughout my first year, then my teacher would give me certain arias, and that's where I started. But I wouldn't say that I went into it just saying, oh, I love opera, which is funny. I just loved the classical music. So it was French song, German song, oratorio. We studied very intensely oratorio and lieder and French song. So we did like Handel's Messiah, all the Bach, Mendelssohn's Elijah. We had classes in that every week. But the opera, funnily enough, there were so few of us actually, vocal students, that we didn't have enough students even to put on a full opera anyway in college. So we did scenes from Mozart operas a lot of the time. We did also a Schubert opera, which was interesting. I never knew Schubert wrote an opera. I think it was actually quite a good way of getting an overview of the classical music style, and therefore it wasn't just doing operatic roles. It was everything. That's a very roundabout answer to your question, but there you go.
No, it's a perfect answer. Now, Paula, you mentioned aria. Can you explain what an aria is, please?
Yes, well, an aria is like a song in an opera. So it's often the moment where the action is often in the recitative, which means that's in the reciting of the text, that's in the spoken moments of the text, that's with the accompaniment underneath. But then the aria is where the character stops and really allows the emotion of the moment to be expressed. And it's those beautiful, often long, beautiful lyrical lines that you associate with a lot of the Italian repertoire. But aria is song.
Paula, my next question is, how do you know which type of operatic voice you have?
Well, I think as a student, it's pretty tricky to know, but the different voice types, let's say for a female voice, the ones that we are most familiar with are soprano, which would be the higher voice type, mezzo soprano, which is literally middle soprano, and then the alto or contralto is the lower female voice. And then in the men's voice, you've got tenor, which is the higher, baritone, the middle, and then the bass, which is the lower. And to be honest, it can take time to figure out what voice type you are. When I started as a student, I was singing more in the soprano range, actually. I think oftentimes younger voices were just trying to find your way, to settle into your voice. Now, when I decided to sing, my teacher in Dublin actually suggested some of the more medium keys for songs, for instance, like in German lieder or French song. And then I would feel like the middle of the voice is really where my voice had the most color, the most natural sound to it. So when one is, let's say, figuring out a voice type, it's about where the voice sits happily, where it's not actually about, oh, I can sing a really high note, therefore I must be a soprano. That's actually not what it's about. It's more about the color of the voice, the timbre of the voice, the where the voice sits. So it's like my voice being called a mezzo soprano, I am very happy kind of middle high. You can go into subdivisions again. So I'm considered a lyric mezzo, which would be a kind of a high mezzo. And what that means is that I'm happy to keep popping up to the absolute top of my register, but where the natural timbre and the warmth and the core of my voice sits in the kind of the middle range. That's how I would maybe try and describe it to you.
I mean, that's a perfect answer. And when you go to see an opera, you have the music, you have the singing, you have the costumes, and you have, is it a romantic opera? Is it a humorous opera? Is it passion? The whole thing is just incredible. But the training to be an opera singer, can you explain a little bit about the training?
Yeah, the training it's all encompassing, because just as you described, there are so many elements, I think, to becoming an opera singer. When I moved from college in Dublin, then to the New England Conservatory in Boston. I suppose what I would describe is, as an opera singer, we need to work on our languages. For me, that's a huge component, is the language element of the profession. So you start with the language, and as much as possible, it's really advantageous to be proficient in at least one or two foreign languages. I studied French at school, but I wouldn't say I'm anywhere fluent in it, but I absolutely adore to sing in French. And then what I did after I finished in New England Conservatory in Boston, I moved to Germany. And then I actually studied German. I lived with a German family, and I ended up living in Germany for almost 10 years. So I would be fairly comfortable with speaking German. So there's the language element of being an opera singer. Then there, of course, there is the acting element to being on stage, because we are asked to inhabit these characters as fully as possible in order to express them and make them believable. And that's actually one of the parts that I absolutely adore about being an opera singer, is just inhabiting these crazy different characters. Learning how to portray those characters on stage. So there's the acting element. Then, of course, there is naturally the vocal aspect. So we are to be quite disciplined. I think technique is something that we will study all of our lives, because the voice is part of our body. It's not something that we have outside of ourselves that perhaps we can tune in a different way or see physically. It's us. It's part of ourselves, and we're growing with it. Therefore, I think even more than perhaps any other instrument, I don't know, it seems like our voice keeps changing because we keep changing. And so it's constantly touching base with how your voice is maturing over the years, and therefore the technique and the study of the voice continues as long as you sing. I think a very important thing about being an opera singer is learning how to be a team member. Opera is an ensemble work, I would say. There are so many people involved in putting on an opera. It's astounding. Every time I go to a new house or a production, I do catch myself and I think, look at the entire team that is involved in putting this on stage, in front of stage, backstage, makeup, costume, set, design, lighting, stage management, the administration, the orchestra, the pianist, the conductor. I mean, it's just such a huge collaboration. And so I think a big part of being an opera singer is learning how to be a member of a team and playing your part. So there's so many. There's so many aspects to it. That's why I think I love it so much.
I mean, Paula, your voice is your tool. How do you go about protecting your voice?
Well, I think I respect my voice. I respect it because at the end of the day, it's a muscle. I try to treat it almost like an athlete. I think we are very athletic. We have to be, not in terms of being, I think we just have to be very mindful of it. What I do, I have respect. I don't smoke. When I'm on a job, I don't drink alcohol very much. On a day of a show, I wouldn't really speak very much. If I could avoid it, I would just try and keep it low key. Getting enough rest, drinking enough water, staying hydrated. Overall, honestly, one can go to extremes in protecting your voice. I try to just live life normally as I can, but with respect. That's what I would say. Of course, it's always interesting when I go to events or to parties. The level of noise at a party just from people speaking is what I found the next day is that what has really kind of worn me out a little bit is that you can tell that your voice is tired the next day after having chatted the whole night away. So I have to kind of limit those events as well in the middle of a gig. But honestly, I try to be sensible, but not so precious, because believe me, there are ways that you could become absolutely paranoid about staying healthy. And then I think that's going the other direction. So interestingly enough, with this pandemic, I think all of our personal hygiene, just the basic hand washing, and that's something that I've been kind of, I guess, doing all my performing life, because when I travel so often, I often wear a mask, and I would be fairly fastidious about hand hygiene, just to keep away the basic colds and flus. So keeping it on that level.
So, Paula, just on the theme of travelling, in your passport, what is your occupation?
I don't think I have I don't think in my Irish passport I have an occupation. That's such a good question.
I know we used to, when we used to have the old British passport, sort of the very dark blue cover with the gold at the front, but now we've all gone over to the red chip ones. Maybe we don't have occupation.
That's an interesting one. Check that out. I don't think I have occupation on my passport. I mean, if I'm applying for anything, and if somebody asks for my occupation, I would put down classical opera singer, I think, is what I would say.
That would spark a fantastic conversation.
Yes.
So, Paula, do you remember back to your very first role? Can you remember what it was and how you felt?
My very first professional operatic role was the part of, she had a wonderful name, Feklusha, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, in a Czech opera by Janáček called Katia Kabanova. And it was produced in Ireland, in Dublin, by Opera Ireland. And I had, I think, 3 lines, maybe 3 lines total. And it was at the very top of the show. And I was like a servant friend type character. And I had to sing them from up a ladder. And I remember being up at the top of the ladder, just praying that I wouldn't fall and that I would catch the cue from the conductor. So I remember it with a slight amount of terror, actually. That was my very first professional role.
So did you manage to stay on the ladder?
I did. I stayed on the ladder. I delivered my lines from the ladder.
No, it was a great success. So, Paula, have you got a favourite role that you've played?
I've quite a few. I would say at the very top of my list is the role of Carmen. Then I would also say the role of Octavian in Strauss's Rosenkavalier would be one of the top roles for me. So, I think both of those roles are really up there. However, I will say that when we met in Valencia, Dorabella in Mozart's Così fan tutte, that is a very, very dear role to me, mostly because of the fact that it's a true ensemble opera. As you saw, there are so many incredible trios, duets in that, and larger ensembles in that piece. And most of the night I spend singing a third underneath Fiordiligi, my sister, the soprano, and there are some mezzos, and I know that they kind of joke about feeling like, always the bridesmaid when you have to like sing under in thirds with the soprano, that she gets all the glory. I absolutely love it, and maybe that speaks to my personality. But I love Così, and I think that's also up there as one of my favorite roles. It's not as flashy as maybe Carmen or even Octavian in Rosenkavalier, but I adore it for the music.
I remember when we were talking about Così fan tutte, you said, I absolutely love it because I don't have to do the heavy lifting. And I always remember that expression. I thought that was fantastic.
Yes, it's true. She's such a fun and feisty character, Dorabella. And I love her.
Is there a dream role, Paula, that is on your wish list?
Yeah, there is. There's a few. I would love to sing the role of Werther, which is the role is Charlotte in the opera Werther by Massenet. And I think it's just coming back to this, I don't know where it comes from. I really have such a feeling for French, the French language, French opera, French music. And so this character of Charlotte just appeals to me. I would love to do it. So if, I'm just going to put it out there on this podcast and see what happens. But Charlotte in Werther is definitely a dream role.
When I have conversations with people about the opera, the first thing is, I don't understand it. They're just screeching, they're warbling, it's all foreign language. I don't understand the story. Can you just sort of talk us through it? I mean, for me personally, when I go to the opera, I have got no problem about pressing the button on the seat in front of me. Generally, there is a seat panel, and you can put the translation in your language, and then you can read the narrative as you go along with the opera. I personally do my homework before I go, so I know the characters, I know the story.
Yeah.
And sometimes I will just sit back, close my eyes, and just let the whole thing wash over me.
Yeah.
It's just, I just cannot enthuse enough about the opera. I just absolutely adore it. I do understand it's not everybody's thing, and that's absolutely fine. But can you just explain, if somebody wants to dip their toe in the world of opera, is there a good one that you would say, yeah, this one, it's got a good story, or...
Again, you've just said, I totally agree with you. I love that idea of the opera as an experience. So just like you said, maybe there are moments where you literally do close your eyes and let it wash over you. I think that's wonderful. But what I would say is that opera is so broad. There are so many different types of operas that one can experience, and there's so many different ways to experience. And now we have different productions. You can have a modern take on a production, a traditional take on a production. So what I would say, I don't know if it would work for everybody, but I do remember a friend of mine, when I was studying the States, I used to go down to one of our best friends in New York, and she asked me about this. She said, what opera should I go to? And we looked up the schedule at the Met. Sure enough, Jenůfa, I believe, was the opera that was on. Now, if you asked anybody, what would you suggest to go for a first opera, they would not maybe necessarily say Janáček's Jenůfa, because it's very dark. But what I love about this world is that, to me, it's like watching a play unfold through music, but really like a play. Like it's in with a lot of the operas that perhaps people say, oh, but they go on and on about the one emotion. Yes, you've got Handel operas that perhaps, they're a particular style. But with Janáček, I remember telling my friend, please check this opera out and tell me what you think. Well, she since has got a subscription to the Met, and that Janáček opera completely hooked her in. Likewise, I did an opera by the Hungarian composer Bartók, and it's called Bluebeard's Castle. It's 1 hour. It is 1 hour, and it's like an intense roller coaster ride. It is so dramatic. It is so fabulous. And the orchestration is so gorgeous, and the story is so gripping, that I think as well, if somebody had the opportunity to go to see Bluebeard's Castle 1 hour, you get a real hit of what opera can be as an experience. I would say do it. Then you have got the traditional operas. Carmen is always going to be an amazing opera to go to as a first-time opera goer. So I would absolutely suggest Carmen. La Bohème was my first, and I would say it's also a very good one. But I would say that the traditional is not necessarily the ones that are going to bring people in. And I think maybe with all the kind of Netflix dramas that we have now, I kind of feel like Janáček, Bartók, these kind of slightly darker, more gripping, and they're just like they pack a punch straight away, might be a way to get especially younger people in. It's just a thought, but yeah.
I think also with the opera, there's a lot of misconceptions. One of the first ones, oh, but it's going to be 4 hours long. As you've said, no, there are operas 1 hour. Yes, they can be 4 hours. Yes, they can be quite short. I think another thing, oh, if I go to the opera, I've got to wear a long dress. I've got to wear...
No. No, we have definitely moved on from that. I mean, the thing is, living in Germany opened up my eyes to the variety of repertoire and the variety of people that attend the opera. And there is absolutely no need to feel like you have to dress a certain way to go to the opera. You're so right. That is not the case anymore. They're also, thankfully, very, very varied price tickets. So hopefully it is affordable in whatever city and town you're living in. And there are also opportunities to go to open dress rehearsals or open rehearsals. There are often events that are held in the lead up to a production where you get to go and hear the director, the conductor, maybe one of the lead singers speak about the piece. I mean, there's so many ways in now, and absolutely it's not. And there's another opera that is a stunning, now that I'm just thinking of kind of short but impactful, one of the greatest operas in the world is Purcell, Dido and Aeneas. And I mean, that opera, no one could fail to be moved after they sang it. Again, it's 1 hour of just the most beautiful and intense music that you can hear. But you're right, in terms of trying to get people into the theatre, we need to absolutely send the message that it is not a dead art, an old art. It's vibrant, it's living. I mean, people are using all sorts of technology now in the opera world. And there was an amazing thing that our company here in Ireland did during lockdown, and it's Irish National Opera, and it will be worth checking out for anybody who wants to just dip their toe in. It's called 20 Shots, and basically they commissioned 20 composers to do 20 short operas, and by short I mean 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 8 minutes, and it's genius. And they're all available on YouTube, I think, and it's just a little glimpse into the world, and I thought it was such a great idea. So there's loads of ways of getting into the world of opera that are accessible now.
First opportunity to go to the opera here in Valencia is we had Puccini's Turandot, and it was completely sold out. So I went to the booking office and said, have you got anything left? He said, I have, it's restricted viewing. And I said, okay, that's fine. So the ticket was €12. In the Valencia Opera House, I think we've got 3 tiers above the stalls. And the seat was just perfect because it was right over the orchestra pit. I was very lucky because basically all the action was on the right hand side of the stage and I was in the gallery on the left, so I just had a perfect view above the orchestra. The colours, the red, the gold, the story, absolutely amazing. Absolutely loved it. And then I treated myself and my husband. We went to opening night. I managed to get a couple of opening night tickets, and yes, we dressed up.
Yeah.
There were people dressed to the nines and other people basically in jeans and a t-shirt. So
yeah.
You say, if you want to dress up, fine. If you don't, nobody's going to worry. My first opera was €12. I won't tell you how much I managed to pay for the but they were worth every moment of it. So I think, you know, some people are worried about what do I wear. Some people are worried about the cost of the ticket. Some people, will I understand it? Well, often you can find on YouTube the whole opera, and that's what I did with Turandot, found it on YouTube, sat and watched it in several parts. Okay, I now know what the story's about.
Yeah.
I know the principal characters, and it just made it better for me. You know, if you want to do your homework before you go, it's absolutely fine. But I just think it's fantastic hearing from you. Do not worry about what you have to wear. You can get cheap tickets. You can get these opening nights. If you want to go the whole hog, you can get the dress rehearsal, that type of thing. So thank you so much for
Oh, yeah, of course.
Insider saying do not be put off, because opera has often been portrayed as for the elite, for the rich, for the VIPs. And it's quite surprising when you go how many children. I mean, I wouldn't say take your 5-year-old, but if you've got a daughter who's having ballet classes or music classes, they will love it. Absolutely.
Oh, no, really. And I mean, there's a lot of work being done now, especially in Germany at least, but hopefully in other places where they're bringing opera into the schools. You know, I mean, music is becoming, in Germany, they were bringing opera scenes into the schools, and then they were doing, if let's say Carmen was on the main stage, they had their education department develop children's version of Carmen to prepare for the children to come and see. So it's I think once then they get into that as children, they're absolutely mesmerized, and they can totally sit and concentrate for whatever the duration of an evening in the theatre is. But yeah, I hope I mean I do understand where it gets that reputation from, and there are still some festivals and some places where I would say they need to do a little bit more work on making it more accessible and on offering tickets that are more affordable. And in general, I think, as you say, we just need to get past that, because I don't believe that that's the norm anymore. I understand where it comes from, but it's for everybody, believe me.
I mean, for me personally, I mean, I love the ballet, I love opera. And during the pandemic, so much stuff appeared on YouTube. You can watch the whole of a ballet, the whole of an opera. And, you know, you can stop, go and make yourself a cup of tea, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so many opera houses, ballet companies were streaming these things for free. I mean, particularly for us here in Spain, we were locked down for 12 weeks. The amount of ballet, opera, concerts I watched on YouTube, well. So, Paula, can you just now talk a little bit about the costumes and the makeup? Because when you go to a performance, when we went to Così fan tutte, you had one costume throughout, I think.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I did.
And if you go to other operas, some of the costumes are so ornate. They come with hats, they come with trains and cloaks and daggers and all these sort of things. How does it work? Does every opera company have their own costumes? Do you beg, borrow and steal from each other?
I think it depends on the opera house. Where I have been most recently, and I would say this is the majority companies, when a production is proposed, it comes with the director is appointed, and the director is the person who actually works together with a costume designer and a set designer. As far as I understand it, the director is the person who then chooses the team, his or her team. And that is where the costume designer, the set designer, and the lighting designer, they are kind of that team. So you've got like the musical team, the directing team, and under the umbrella of the directing team, you'll often see in the opening night performance at the bows, you'll have the conductor usually comes on after the principals have taken their bows. Somebody brings on the conductor, and then the next group of people is the artistic team. And that will be the director, costume, set, lighting, designer. So then the costume designer will work with the in-house costume department. So they will have sent through drawings. They will have started, the costume department then in-house will have gotten to work on producing what the costume designer has designed. And they will be doing it on busts for months, and many, many, many months beforehand. I will have already provided my costume measurements either through my manager, or maybe as I was in Frankfurt, because I worked there for almost 10 years, they would have had my costume measurements anyway on file, and they would see me every 3-4 weeks for whatever costume was happening with whatever show. So then the very first few days of any new production, which is when these costumes are often, they're just built for new productions usually, you would come in, and there's often an hour and a half, 2 hours set aside for your first fitting. Now, it depends. Some designers will be able to say, listen, I saw a fabulous, let's say, I think for Dorabella, I was wearing a trouser suit and it was kind of like a power suit, and they might have seen that in the Zara line of clothing, or somebody else, and so it might have been purchased straight off the rack, or somebody else would say, no, I want to make this and tailor this for my specifications. So it depends on the budget of the house. It will depend on so many factors like that. But that's the first thing. And I mean, I did a show in Opera Frankfurt where I had the honor, and I mean it really was an honor, to work with Christian Lacroix, the designer. He was designing the costumes for this particular show, and he was the kindest man. But the skirts and the dresses that I had for that really were couture. I mean, the material was astounding. I had to learn how to walk in these gowns and how to carry them. But the costume is such a huge part of the character, and so during our rehearsal, what will often happen is we will get what are called rehearsal costumes, which will mimic the main costume because it is so part of your development of the character. How does the character walk in these particular clothes? How do they feel in this? Is it? I mean, I often play the part of a young guy. That's the mezzo sopranos often play trouser roles. So it's important for me to get into the physicality of the role through the costumes. So after you have your first fitting, then they'll make notes. You come back maybe for a second fitting, and then it's made up again, and then the third, and then I mean, there's so many. The artistry that is involved in the costume departments that I have worked with, the attention to detail is astounding. I would often think, but who is going to know the hours that have gone into this costume? I mean, it's unbelievable. But sure enough, they really, they just, it's their passion and an art. It's so gorgeous. It's just so beautiful. So that's the costume department. And then the costume department and the wig and makeup department will then also work together again through the designer. The designer will come and say, listen, I have this idea for the palette of colors for Dorabella. Can we look at this? They will often take pictures. They will have drawings of me, or they will have a kind of a sketch-up, a mock-up of what they would like. And then they work closely together with the makeup department. Let's say after the first piano dress rehearsal is usually a really telling moment where the makeup and wig department will have come up with the design with the designer, and they will have put it into practice, let's say, and then I go on, and then sure enough there will be notes at the intermission or notes at the end, and the designer might come up and say, yeah, I think I needed to pop more in the eyes, or no, we need to take it back, or the wig, she needs to be able to play more with it, it doesn't look natural enough, or it looks amazing, let's just run with it, you know. So it's always evolving, but it's, like I said at the very beginning, there's so many people involved in putting on an opera. I don't know if that answers that question.
Absolutely. I mean, the fact you talked about you had a couture gown by Christine Lecroix, assuming you can't, for a little memento, I'm just going to keep this costume.
Wouldn't I love it? Believe me. I even asked, I said, is there any way of getting, no, of course not, because the production lives on, you know, there's going to be other singers that will do it, but I got it made for me. I mean, Christian Lacroix was in the room. He's the kindest man, so patient, so wonderful, so kind. And it was my first gig back after my first daughter was born. And he just made me feel so comfortable. It was incredible. Yeah. Really, really incredible.
I mean, that story is just fantastic. I'll have to get you to send me a photograph of you in that dress, and I can put it on the Facebook and the Instagram. I mean, that's just amazing. Absolutely. I mean, to have that made for you, I think I would have tried to sneak it out. I think I would, or at least maybe taken a button or something, or a jewel off of it as a little moment. Oh, it fell off during the performance. So, Paula, just before we finish this conversation, is there anything you want to add that I haven't asked you about the world of opera? I'm sure when I finish, I'm going to think, why didn't I ask you about why didn't I ask you about that? Is there anything major I've missed? We've talked about roles, we've talked about costume, we've talked about people going and having the experience of the opera.
I don't know if there's anything missing. I mean, I would say in terms of the life of an opera singer, there is now so much available on social media. You know, one can follow loads of different singers, maybe to get a glimpse. I don't know if it's always, you know, social media, it's hard to know if it's the whole truth and nothing but the truth, but at least we get a glimpse into we often see people will post backstage video clips, recordings, and I just think that to be able to sing opera for me and to have this life as a classical singer is something I will never take for granted. I would say during this pandemic, what has been most tough is not being able to meet my colleagues. The collaborative element that I mentioned from, I think, the very beginning is what I love about being on stage and working with so many people, musicians, actors, you know, technicians in front, behind stage, and to have that kind of taken away in such a brutal fashion, in such a sudden way, was really, really tricky. And I missed that so much. I miss the audience, because I think what is so important, and what I would encourage everybody out there, is please go support opera when it comes back. Of course, it will be made sure to be safe when it eventually does come back. We need you, we need the audience. I miss that feedback. I've done several things just recording only, online only, and it is another experience, and I'm so grateful that we have managed to even do that while in lockdown. Opera is about experiencing it live, I think, and being in the theatre and letting it, affect you whichever way it will in the moment. Everybody's comes into the theatre in a different frame of mind. So, but I just hope that happens. I love my life as a singer. I love that I can travel, that we travel as a family. I have amazing support from my husband and from my own parents, and without that I definitely wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. So I would say that that's a huge part of having this life for me. So that would be something that I think a working opera singer, mum and wife is something that I pride myself. Not pride, that's not the wrong word. That is definitely the wrong word. I think it's very important to acknowledge that I have a huge support network behind me and a team of people that allow me to do this incredible job. So I just hope to continue it as long as I can.
Paula, it's been an absolute pleasure. I have to say, totally self-indulgent having this conversation with you, but I hope during the conversation we've given a good broad outline of the world of opera. We've dispelled some of the myths about going to see an opera, what you wear, how much tickets are, etc. Operas to try, watching opera on the YouTube. If you want to, dip your toe in, watch something on YouTube. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I just thank you so much, Paula. It's been an absolutely fabulous conversation.
I've enjoyed every minute. Thank you, Sheila, and thank you for getting the word out there about opera and accessibility and that world. Come join us.
Fingers crossed. Let's hope you can get back out there on stage. We can get back into the opera houses and the theatres and enjoy the world of opera. So, Paula, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you have enjoyed the conversation. Don't forget, if you have a story you would like to tell, please get in touch. My email address is allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com, and thank you for listening.